This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
We've got some Michigan football news and views coming your way next here on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison. Brady gets terrific.
Present and a touchdown night again.
Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. My good friend from WTKA in Ann Arbor, partner at Wolverine Digest, Michael Spath, will be joining us later in the show. And we'll talk about the Wolverines on their way to the Sweet 16 for the third year in a row, for the first time in school history, second time in school history, back-to-back 30-win seasons for the first time in school history. Can the Wolverines get to back-to-back Final Fours? For one of the few times in school history? Cassie Russell did it. The Fab Five did it. This would be the third time they've done it. If they do it again this weekend, we'll break all of that down with Michael Spath coming up a little bit later on. But we begin here at the top with what we teased before the intro. Let's talk some spring football. And maybe it's just me, but is Coach Harbaugh like sharing? Did they pass out the sharing ball at Schembechler Hall? It's like now that he's got an OC along with a DC, he's kind of like, the CEO coach, and he's like talking to us now. Typically, you got to listen to his podcast to find out what he thinks about anything, but he's like sharing stuff with us now. And so we've got a lot of things that we get to discuss with spring practice about a third of the way through. Some of the major headlines that have come out, we will share each of those and then give you our view on what we think those headlines mean. Let's begin with spring football news and views. Here's the first bit of news. Jim Harbaugh was adamant that this really is Josh Gaddis's offense and that Gaddis will be who calls the plays. So, hey, I was one of the people doing this too originally. I believe it when I see it. Well, I kind of think it's time to believe it now, guys. I mean, Headman's pretty adamant. He's got his quirkiness. There's no doubt about that, but he's never been known for being dishonest. Even Wilton Spate said when he was here about a week ago for Pro Day, hey, I had my disagreements with Coach Harbaugh, but he always gives it to you straight. I mean, there's nothing deceptive in him at all. So he is adamant that Josh Gaddis is the OC. He is the one calling the plays. So I think it is time to finally buy in to what they are selling, which brings us to our next headline. Gaddis, our new OC, says Michigan will never huddle. When asked to describe Michigan's offense under Coach Gaddis, he said, hey, we are a pro spread, and we never huddle. That's what he said. We are a pro spread, and we never huddle. You know who I think that's good news for? Lots of guys. but I'm going to call my shot right now. The season's about 160 days away. I think Shea Patterson is going to break every meaningful, if he's healthy, every meaningful single season passing mark at Michigan this year. This is the very offense that he had at Ole Miss when he was the leading passer in the SEC. I think you're going to see him light it up if they're really serious about making this evolution. And again, I understand if you're like, I'll believe it when I see it. But I'm starting to believe that this is actually what we are going to see. Next headline out of spring ball to discuss: Harbaugh gives the team Co-East Division champion T-shirts, but on the back of the shirts is the score of all the games they lost. I like that. I like it, man. Remember how we all freaked out when on the Harbaugh's podcast they were talking about, and it was really, Jack Harbaugh, the dad, talking about, shouldn't there be a co-division championship? We had conference championships in my day, and all of us screamed out, no! That would be the worst self-own for the Michigan Wolverines since Rich Rod said, hey, hold my hands and sing this Josh Groban with me. No. Not even hell no, but no, we're not hanging out. No, not unless you want to drive subs to Buckeye Grove. No, we do not hang banners for co-division titles. What we do with them, though, is we put it on a T-shirt with all the scores of the games you lost. Now, that's your money for your nothing and your chicks for free. That's how you play the guitar on the MTV right there. I like that. That's Jimmy. We've missed that. Right? That's Jimmy right there. That's the kind of troll I like to see. That's the kind of reminder I think the team needs. So I think that is a pro move there by the Michigan football coach. Next piece of news to talk about coming out of spring. Let's get into some specific stuff with players. Zach Charbonnet, the highest ranked running back recruit signed by Coach Harbaugh. He's out for the spring with a meniscus. You might recall that he also didn't play at the Under Armour game, recovering, and this is apparently what he was recovering from, and that's why a lot of people thought he didn't make the next star status up to a 5-star. So what I think that means is I think at this point it's a mild upset if Christian Turner isn't the starting running back first Saturday in September against Middle Tennessee. He's got now all of his last year, and he got to redshirt, but still play a few games with the new redshirt rule. Yeah, he went through all of the bowl practices. He's going to go through all of the spring with getting the predominant amount of number 1 reps. So I think, I'm sure we'll see Zach Charbonnet with his skill set and a meniscus. This is not anything that's serious. It just means he's going to be out for the 3 weeks that, they're going to be spring practicing. I think that's going to give Christian Turner a huge edge, though, in terms of seasonal prep, and I expect that this all but confirms he will be the starting tailback for Michigan, provided that he remains healthy over the course of the offseason. Next piece of news to talk about, Ben Mason, Bench Mason. Harbaugh says he's going to play both ways, but on the defensive line. So, in fact, actually just today, there's reports now that he's also playing tight end. So I think this means a couple of things. One, I think this is further reinforcement that the offense is changing. And so the role of fullback is being devalued. It's not something that's going to be needed on a full-time basis, and maybe even only on a situational one, if at all. But this is a guy that's just way too good of an athlete not to utilize. Typically, when you make the transition from running back on the defensive side of the ball, you end up at safety or at linebacker. In this case, we're talking defensive line. He weighs, I think about the team roster says 254. That's a few pounds lighter than what Chase Winovich weighed last year, when he was first team All Big Ten. So they could certainly use the depth there. That's a major switch, though, not one you typically see. But Ben Mason isn't the athlete you typically see either. I'm calling another shot. Future American Ninja Warrior champion, Ben Mason. Next bit of news for us to give our views. Khaleke Hudson says Josh Ross could be even better than Devin Bush. To quote the great prophet Keith Olbermann to Chris Matthews one fateful night, easy. Hold on now, okay? Hey, if that's 50% true, great. I think Devin Bush is the finest athlete to play inside or middle linebacker at Michigan in my fandom. And I think he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft 30 days from today. So if Josh Ross is better than that, well, start naming awards after him. How about just be really good? We'll go with that. Just be a really good Josh Ross. But I think we should maybe slow our roll a little bit where that one is concerned. Headline: Benjamin St-Juste has medically retired. Now, for those of you that don't remember, St-Juste was a 4-star recruit from Canada, early enrollee in 2017, played in every game during the 2017 season. One of the first breed of these longer corners that Jim Harbaugh has wanted Michigan to go after more and more, and you've seen more of that in the last few classes. Somebody they thought had some promise. I think it's a hamstring injury that he's been struggling with. Well, now he's not on the roster. Michigan says he has medically retired. So the bad news is I think this is a young man that had some real promise. The good news is I think Michigan goes into spring with 13 defensive backs on scholarship. There's more than enough depth there to come up with a competitive unit. And a Coach Zordich, you're talking about one of the finest position coaches in the country anyway. And there hasn't been a year since he's been here with Coach Harbaugh that he has not put together one of the best secondaries in the country. And since he's bringing back Lavert Hill, who I think will be a preseason All-American, Josh Metellus, who I think will be preseason All-Big Ten, no reason to expect that or not to expect that we will do the same this fall as well. But best of luck to Benjamin St-Juste. Next headline we are going to discuss here on Michigan Podcast. Eric All is the first early enrollee singled out by Harbaugh. And doesn't it often work like this too? That sometimes it's the guys that are the least heralded that end up flashing the soonest and the mostest. Eric All was a 3-star tight end out of Ohio for much of his recruitment, got a 4th star late. And here's the thing to keep in mind. I mean, even without Zach Gentry, this is a position that has a lot of depth. I mean, look, Schoonmaker, you have Mustafa Muhammad there, Nick Eubanks there. I mean, they've got plenty of quality depth at the tight end position. So that's not a spot where there is an opportunity for an Eric All to shine. Because sometimes when guys shine early, it's because there's such a gaping void at that position that it's, the process of osmosis. Nature abhors a vacuum. That's not the case. So here we have a promising freshman that is shining at a position where there is talent and depth. So I think that speaks very well to Eric All's immediate and long-term future in the winged helmet. Last item to go over, and this might be the best player news of the whole spring. Defensive line coach Sean Nua says, Luigi Villain looks good. Luigi Villain, we have forgotten about him. But other than Rashawn Gary, he is the second highest rated recruit at defensive end Michigan has signed in recent memory. This was a top 50 national recruit. This guy just dominated the Under Armour game 2 years ago. He's just had back-to-back injuries. So he's kind of been forgotten about. But if he is able to go, you're talking about a guy with next-level difference-maker talent coming off the edge. And that could be the difference in winning one of those key games on the schedule later this fall or not. That's why I think that is potentially the best player news of them all. We'll come back. Michael Spath will join us. We're going to talk about Michigan's run to the Sweet 16. Can they go back to the Final Four? That's next here on Michigan Podcast. Thank you to all of you that are supporting us here on Patreon. We get asked frequently, hey, what can we do to support what you guys are doing here at Michigan Podcast? And one of the best ways to do that is to support us with a very inexpensive nominal contribution at Patreon. And as you can see, throughout the course of the year for our Patreon supporters, we do give you exclusive content we don't offer anywhere else, just as a way of saying thank you. So to all of you that have supported us throughout the year at Patreon, thank you. Thank you in advance to those of you who are willing to sign up and do so in the future, and go blue. And we're back here on Michigan Podcast. I'm Steve Deace, joined by Michael Spath from WTKA in Ann Arbor and also Wolverine Digest. And I saw that you've got a love letter. You've been writing a lot of those to men recently, Michael. Maybe we should talk about that off the air, but that's a topic for another show. But first it was Xavier Simpson, and now it is John Beilein. I think you want to call it, though, a thank you note, right? That's what we're officially calling it, is a thank you note and not a love letter, correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably better for my marriage to call it a thank you note than a love letter. You know what it is, Steve, is I think where maybe I've gotten a little bit older. I don't want to say wiser or more savvy. I was just a little more appreciative. Michigan basketball has been so good for this 7, 8, 9 year window of John Beilein, and I think it's really a contrast to what football has been. It's what helps me put that in perspective. And when you see John Beilein taking this team to the Sweet 16 in a row, something that's only been done 3 times in program history. Most recently when the Fab Five were playing, that's the last time that they went to 3 straight Sweet 16s. I think it's just it's a moment of reflection. You've got a couple of days between the end of the second round and the start of the Sweet 16 just to say, man, how fortunate are we that we as Michigan fans are now getting used to competing for Big Ten championships every year, competing for Sweet 16s and beyond every single tournament, and we're doing it in a way that we can look ourselves in the mirror every single day and say, hey, we're not Duke, we're not Kansas, we're not Arizona, we're not one of these programs that is handing out cash, has got snarky coaches. We're doing it the right way. And so, yeah, it was a love letter. It was a thank you note to John Beilein. Definitely. He deserves it.
I agree. He deserves it. And for those that think maybe we're waxing a little poetic here, here's the run since 2012. Okay. Since 2012, Michigan has 2 regular season Big Ten titles, 2 Big Ten tournament titles, 5 trips now to the Sweet 16, 3 trips to the Elite 8, maybe a 4th in the offing, 2 trips to the national championship game. That's since 2012, Michael. I think this is the greatest era of Michigan basketball ever. What do you think?
You know what? Here's what's crazy is say they beat Louisville or they beat Villanova last year and they have a national championship instead of just those 2 runners-up. Mm-hmm. I think we're talking about Michigan basketball along with Duke as the preeminent program in college basketball over that time period. That's how good they've been, and that few teams can match. When you look at it, it's on par with like a program like Kansas. And Kansas has a lot of NCAA duds. It's on par with Michigan State, and Michigan State until this year has had a lot of NCAA duds. It's on par with what North Carolina's done the last 7 years. It really is incredible, and I agree with you. This is the best stretch of Michigan basketball, at least in my lifetime. Maybe if you take 89 through 94, because you won a national championship, you had the Fab Five for 3 years of them being together for the most part. That's about all that you could say. But this has been incredible. They've done it with National Player of the Year and Trey Burke. They've done it with sometimes some top 50 recruits, but they've done it mostly with guys that John Beilein identifies that he doesn't have to compete with the Dukes of the world for, and that he just develops and builds them into a complete team, a team that plays defense, a team that plays with hustle and grit, a team that's a lot like its coach, doesn't panic under pressure, with the exception of maybe of a Michigan State game here and there. But no, it's been a great run, and again, I'm going to sit here and try to appreciate it. I'm going to try to appreciate it at least for these 3 days, because come Thursday, I'll probably be in an entirely different mindset than I am in this transitionary period.
You have some competition in the bromance department where Xavier Simpson's concerned now, and I've been trending there for a while. But dude, I am so all in on him right now. I love everything about him. I'd like to nickname him son-in-law. Okay. And the final step for me was watching him up close and personal when they were here in Des Moines for the NCAA tournament. And you think you understand his full impact on the team just from watching on television. But I don't think at least I didn't understand it, and the full depth and breadth of it until I saw it in person. When you're there in person, even when the cameras aren't on, no slight goes unanswered. Nothing. No last word is accepted. He takes nothing for granted. There are no chads hanging. There are no participles dangling. He confronts every every provocation. There was a moment as they were coming back from break, they were getting ready to inbound a ball, and he wasn't standing where the referee wanted him to. And the referee reached back to kind of move him, but he reached in an area where basically looked like he was grabbing his junk. And the look he gave that ref, okay? I mean, even little things like that, like he doesn't give a care. I don't know how else to put it. When you watch it in person, though, he is just a son of a, you know what, man? He just is. And then what you love about it, though, too, is after the game, you talk to him and you listen to him being interviewed, and like you think you're listening to like the youth pastor, and he couldn't be more polite. He couldn't be more articulate, eloquent, considerate. And, you know, Michael, I think I'm going to send him flowers. I'm in right now, Mike. I love the guy.
Well, you know what? I don't know that I'd do that right now. I think he's in such a competitive place that he'd probably pick those flowers up and step on all over them.
Yeah, did you see when do the water shooting thing in the locker room afterwards? When they on Saturday, did you see that? He walked away. Did you see that?
I did not see that, but that sounds like Xavier Simpson. His mission is not yet complete, so you might want to save that bouquet until he's done. You know, I posted something yesterday. I'm sure you saw it, Steve. I mean, you know, how important he is to this team compared to, say, Trey Burke to that 2013 team. And, you know, I get that Trey Burke is kind of like Woodson, right, where there's really no one you can put in that conversation along with him. What he was able to do, the impact that he had on the success of Michigan basketball is maybe unrivaled. But right after that, you know, who's your 1B or who's your number 2 in terms of Beilein's greatest players? And before it's said and done here, I think Xavier Simpson is going to have an argument for it. I really am. I mean, he does everything well. If he could shoot the 3-point ball, he would probably go down as the number 2 player for sure, and he might still go down because of what he brings leadership-wise, because of what he brings defensively, how he sets the tone, because of what he brings as a distributor of the basketball. You know, his ability to change his game offensively and develop his hook shot or get to the basket. He's way better at the free throw line than he was at the beginning of the season. He's constantly improving himself and improving his team around him. And I don't know that we're ever going to have, at least so far, we have not had a leader that, you know, has made it to his senior year quite like Xavier Simpson. And I don't know that we're going to. I mean, he's going to go in that special place among the greatest captains, not just in basketball, but in football and hockey and every other sport that you want to throw into the mix. He is a special player. And, yeah, I mean, I'm appreciating him. You know, I think the thing is that, Steve, is that with Beilein and Xavier, it's a lot easier to appreciate them than, say, someone like Jordan Poole, who in 1 second we're jumping up and high-fiving, and the other second we're taking that glass of beer and, you know, and throwing it against the wall because it's just driven us crazy. So maybe that's why it's been easier to pen those love letters to those two guys.
I'm gonna call another shot right now. I was doing this in the first segment on some stuff going on during spring football, so I'm gonna call a shot right now for basketball next season. Xavier Simpson's a 40% 3-point shooter next year. Mark it down. When you look at the way you look at the way he's developed his game as a confident ball handler. Remember when he would come in, he was Eli Brooks his freshman year. Okay, when he would come in, you're like, oh no. Okay, remember? People forget that. You know, the way he just wasn't confident with the ball. Now he's maybe Michigan's most confident ball handler since, I don't know, Gary Grant, Ramil Robinson, somewhere along those lines. You look at the way he's improved his free throw shooting, the repertoire he's added around the basket and the hook shots and the scoop shots. There's only one thing left. And you tell that young man, hey, you'd be great except for this one thing. Okay? It's the only thing left is that 3-point shot. I'll bet you we will be shocked by how good of a shooter he'll be next year.
I'll say he's going to improve dramatically. But what's he shooting right now? 28%?
Yeah, I thought it was right around somewhere a little less than 30. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll say he'll get up to like the north of 35, but 40% is still pretty damn impressive. And I just don't know if you can take that. Can you take a 10 percentage point jump in 1 year? If he does that, then he's going to be a candidate for National Player of the Year, honestly, because if he can shoot 40% from three, then he's going to get at least 2 to 3 more baskets per game. That's going to be somewhere between 6 and 9 points, maybe better in a couple situations. And all of a sudden, he's going to go from being a 9-point scorer to be a 18-point scorer, and a guy that distributes the basketball per game, has a couple of steals, averages probably 6.5 boards. That's all of a sudden going to be a really, really impressive individual performance.
Let's talk about this path. It seems like a little deja vu here. Michigan going back to SoCal and watching Gonzaga play Florida State in one of the regional games. They're taking on a team from Texas in the other. So it seems similar, although this team from Texas, I agree, and having lived, living in Iowa, I get to watch a ton of Big 12. They're better than Texas A&M was a year ago. I've kind of chuckled watching a lot of Michigan analysts and a lot of folks in my Twitter feed build Texas Tech up to a mythological status. I'm trying to figure out how the hell they ever lost any games reading some of this analysis, okay? And Chris Beard's a great coach. I mean, if and when John Beilein were to step aside, he'd be close to number 1 on my list as a target. You're going to see a lot of similarities in the way they play basketball to what you see out of John Beilein. And they were picked 7th in the Big 12. They lost 4 of their top 5 scorers from a year ago. So, I mean, this is a hell of a coaching job for them to, share the conference title. But a couple of things here is I already know they're good because I've watched them all year. I think people are making it sound like, though, that this is a tremendous team. It's not a great year in the Big 12 this year, and we've seen that play itself out in the NCAA tournament. And I think in this game, Texas Tech kind of is to Michigan in basketball what Wisconsin, when Michigan is good, is to Michigan in football. A very similar style, but Michigan just doing it with better players. And one thing, the Custer kid will be a first-round pick, I agree. But let me just tell you, watching a lot of Big 12 basketball, they don't have on-the-ball defenders, anything like Xavier Simpson in that entire conference. And so I will be fascinated to see how Texas Tech's guards respond and react to that, because that's going to be when you can't get into your base offense because of that on-the-ball defense, suddenly those season-long, offensive efficiency numbers that you built up against a league that plays a lot more wide open than the Big Ten does, suddenly they don't come into play because you're starting your offense 25, 28 feet from the basket instead of at the three-point line extended. But what are your thoughts on Thursday night, Michael?
Yeah, one of the things you said there, and I wonder why this happens. I think it happens just in the nature of college sports, is the next opponent, and Lou Holtz was famous for this, and we certainly saw Lloyd Carr do it, and every coach and staff does this, where the team that they're about to face somehow turns out to be the best team that they've faced all year. Is Texas Tech the best team that Michigan has faced all year? No, I don't think they are. I think Michigan State has been the best team so far. I think North Carolina has been a great team that Michigan has faced, and my compatriot at Inside the Huddle, Zach Shaw, who covers Michigan for 247sports.com. I mean, he loves to do this. He loves to turn every Michigan opponent into this unbeatable Goliath that Michigan will consider themselves lucky to somehow take down. We talked to him on Friday, and he was, I think I'm going to take Florida in this game. I think Florida's got the edge on Michigan, and Michigan goes out there and beats them by 15 points. I think when you look at this Texas Tech team, and I've seen far fewer games. I said on the radio that I've only really seen the 2 games for this past weekend where I was able to watch more than 30 to 35 minutes of them. So I don't know them super well. But I do know that if they're the most efficient, one of the most efficient defensive teams, Michigan's right there. And so, you're used to practicing against your own guys. I don't think they're going to be intimidated by that. I don't think they're going to all of a sudden think, my goodness, how do we score against this team? John Beilein's got a week to get his guys ready. Offense is not what Michigan's great at, but they're not terrible either. Looking at this and suddenly saying, well, my gosh, this is going to be, Michigan's going to have to reinvent the wheel. The first team to 60 scores. I think we're going to be a little surprised. I mean, you said you're calling your shot with Xavier Simpson, get bumped up to 40%. I think one of these teams wins by getting to 75 points in this game, and there's a little bit of a surprise. Not saying it's let down, but I think both teams, because they're used to playing against a great defense in practice, I think both teams are going to be more ready for this than if you were talking about, some team that doesn't play hard on the ball, strong defensive attack.
So counting Michigan's 2 wins to open the NCAA tournament, Michael, I looked at this I looked this stat up yesterday. Counting the wins over Montana and Florida, Michigan has 12 wins against the 2019 NCAA tournament field, and their average margin of victory in those 12 games is 16 points per game, Michael.
Wow. Okay. That is rather incredible. I don't even know what to do with that stat. I have no idea.
See, I think we have forgotten how good this team is because we are loath to give Michigan State credit for anything, and they punked us 3 times. And so I think this happened nationally. Like if I think we all thought when Isaiah Livers hit that 3 to go up 5 with 2 minutes left, Michigan was going to win that game in Chicago. Okay. If Michigan had won that game, how many of those guys on all the bracketology panels later that night would have picked Michigan to go to the Final Four? Okay. I think the Big Ten was undervalued in general by Michigan State beating Michigan 3 times. And I think people have forgotten how good Michigan is because pretty much when they've taken on an NCAA, anybody else in this tournament other than Michigan State, they've housed them. So, I think there's a lot of overreaction. And I think for Michigan fans, the overreaction is we just don't want to give Michigan State credit for being really good. All right. And then I think nationally, I think there's this reaction. Well, they lost to Michigan State all 3 times. Like I couldn't figure out, and this argument's 2 weeks old now and irrelevant, but I think it speaks to this point. Michigan State had the most quad 1 wins in college basketball. They won the conference regular season and conference tournament of the number 1 RPI league. And explain to me what in their resume is, or what in North Carolina's resume is better than Michigan State's? Answer: nothing. North Carolina got beat at home pretty convincingly by Kentucky. They got destroyed by Michigan in the non-conference. I think overall, this 20-game season the Big Ten played, everybody forgot that the Big Ten went into Christmas with 11 teams in the top 50 of the net. That the Big Ten dominated the non-conference season this year, and for the next 2.5 months, those teams just freaking killed each other. And I think that caused a lot of the rest of the college basketball world to kind of forget how good this league is, and I think Michigan's included in that.
Well, look at the Open the Weekend NCAA tournament. Other than Oregon or Wisconsin embarrassing themselves against Oregon, every other team won a first-round game, and even in the games that they would exit from the tournament, I thought that they looked pretty good. Iowa almost pulled off an upset of number 2 seed Tennessee. Purdue, dethroned the previous national champion and looked, really convincing doing so. Michigan won by double digits in both games. Michigan State won by double digits in both games. I agree with you. I think the Big Ten was underrated going into the NCAA tournament. I think the NCAA selection committee falls in love with the ACC, just as the committee in football falls in love with the SEC. And at least in football, you understand a little bit why. In basketball, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think North Carolina should have got as many points as they got for beating 2 Zion Williamson-less Duke teams. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of it. Virginia showed, at least for a first half against Gardner-Webb, that, they don't really know how to handle success. So it'll be, interesting to keep an eye on them. And Duke, as talented as they are, and they're going to have, 3 of the top 10 NBA draft picks, and Zion Williamson has the possibility of being the best draft pick since LeBron. Not saying he's going to be the best player, but maybe the best draft pick since LeBron. For as good as they are, you saw a team that played really well in Central Florida over the weekend that was almost able to take Duke out because they played really good team basketball. And so, I think you're right. I think that's one of the reasons why I think the Big Ten is still gonna have has a little bit more in the tank, and is going to still be pretty good here. I would not be surprised to see all 3 Big Ten teams advance to the Elite Eight after the games on Thursday and Friday. And I do think the ACC is going to be right there too. I think it's going to ultimately come down to those two leagues to decide the national championship.
So final thing, Michael, when we come back here next week, Do you think we are talking and looking ahead to Michigan in Minneapolis in the Final Four? What do you think?
You know, the last maybe 24 hours or so, I've kind of talked my way out of this idea that Michigan is going to play there. But in that immediate aftermath of Saturday, Sunday, watching the games, I felt really good about Michigan State. I know Texas Tech is formidable, but I think Michigan's got them. And then who do they play after that? Is it a red-hot Florida State team that's even more lethal than they were a year ago when the Wolverines played them? Or is it a Gonzaga team that's that's not going to underwhelm? Man, you know what? Michigan's going to need one of these two games for its offense to just light it up. I think they're going to get it done. And I think Michigan State's going to get it done against Duke. Yeah, we're going to be talking next week about Michigan State in Minneapolis, Part 4, and all the anxiety and yet anticipation that comes with that matchup.
That would be incredible if that went down in the Final Four. Wow. Great stuff. Always good to talk to you, Michael. Go Blue, and we'll be listening on WTKA, and we'll talk to you next week, brother.
Okay, sounds good, guys.
If you like what we do here, WolverineDigest.com is the website. We update it frequently with commentary. If you don't want to wait until Tuesday and when a new episode gets unveiled each week, keep updated each and every week at WolverineDigest.com. Both myself and Michael Spath from WTKA Ann Arbor write commentary there each and every day. WolverineDigest.com. Well, we asked you the same question we just asked Michael Spath. That's our Twitter question of the week. Will Michigan advance to the Final Four for the second straight year? 60% of you said yes. 40% of you said no. Here's hoping that the 60% of you that said yes, you turn out to be prophetic. Let's go to this week's question of the week. Girl Blue asks, I'm scared, optimistically scared. Is that a good thing? Yeah. Man, that's actually one of the best descriptions of being a fan, Girl Blue, I've ever heard. Optimistically scared. I mean, that nails it. You know, that ought to be on a bumper. Hey, what's it mean to be a fan? Well, it means you're optimistically scared. Well, I mean, that's one of the best definitions I've ever heard. So I think that's cash money, homie. Hey, don't forget to follow us all week long at WolverineDigest.com, at Michigan Podcast on Twitter as well. I want to thank our friends at Detroit Sports Podcast for helping us get the word out about this show each and every week. Like, review, subscribe, 5 stars, you know the whole drill, whether it's YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. The more of you that do that whole like and subscribe thing, the more of you that more people like you we find, and share the link. All right. Word of mouth is always the best marketing. Share the link to this show to your other Wolverines that you know around the country to help us grow our audience here as well. That's if you like us. If you don't like us, then it's not like we haven't given you a reason not to like us. Just maybe keep that to yourself because we're really sensitive around here. Go Blue, and we'll see you next week.